Assalamu alaikum guys, this is your teacher Dr. Noor Muhammad and you are watching me in AS level biology series. Uh, as you know that we were doing chapter number 1 and 4 in combine, and we are doing the topic, very important topic of this chapter, and that topic is cell membrane. In the last lecture, if you remember, I have given you the points of fluid mosaic model. That was the most detailed model given about the structure and the function of the cell membrane, and that structure is not only telling us that model is not only telling us the structure of the cell membrane, it is also explaining how that structure is relatable to its functions of to the function of cell membrane. As I've told you that cell membrane has a very important role to play for the cell. It is a protective layer. At the same time, transport across the cell is not possible. You cannot bypass cell membrane in any way, and therefore cell membrane is really important, because without cell membrane, without the function, or without involving the cell membrane, nothing can go out of the cell and nothing can come into the cell. So I've given you the points. मैंने जब points आपको लिखवा रहा था तो we were just briefly discussing all those points, but मैंने diagrammatically आपको अब तक समझाया नहीं है. So in this particular topic, as this is one of the very important topic of this chapter, so not only I'm going to show you my board diagrams, but as my A2 students already know this, that in any particular topic we always take help from video, animated video presentations. So in this particular topic you will be understanding everything on the board, as well as you will be shown different video presentations related to the topic, so that you can get, or you can connect the concept given on the board to the video presentation, and that will give you the visual memory of the topic, and inshallah by this means you can remember the topic for the longer period of time, and you will not have any sort of confusion in any way. ठीक है. तो आज भी हमारी जो डिस्कशन कंटिन्यू हो रही है, that is basically about the structure of cell membrane. It's the structure of cell membrane again. So, what I need to mention here, that according to fluid mosaic model, ये हम चलेंगे. According to fluid mosaic model, you should know that. अच्छा, let's suppose कि ये हमारे पास एक सेल है, and that's the cell membrane. ये हमारे पास क्या है? ये इसकी सेल मेम्ब्रेन है. आई एम टेकिंग this part, let's say this part of the membrane. I'm going to draw this part here in a magnified version, this part here in the magnified version. So let's see how the cell membrane is made up of, how the cell membrane is composed according to fluid mosaic model. किस तरह से cell membrane की composition हुई भी है. Let's talk about this now. So the first thing first, that it is composed of it is going to take a while in drawing the diagrams, but it's really important for you to understand everything through diagrammatic concept. Okay, according to this model, first point you need to understand that cell membrane which is here, अगर मैं उसको मैग्नीफाई करके ड्रॉ कर रहा हूँ तो I can clearly see here, just give me a second. Okay, cell membrane, as you can see here, that cell membrane is composed of two layers, one and two. Cell membrane is composed of two layers of lipids, and these two layers have this is outside environment and this is inside environment. So what are we seeing here? That cell membrane is composed of lipid bilayer, and this lipid was phospholipid. This lipid is phospholipid. Okay, we have discussed this. And phospholipid is basically a type of lipid, अगर मैं इसको अलग से दिखाऊं, that it is a type of lipid that consists of one phosphate group. This is one phosphate group, highly charged group. Then it has the glycerol molecule, and to the glycerol molecules a fatty acid chain is attached. This is one molecule of phospholipid, one molecule of phospholipid. ठीक है ना? This is one molecule of phospholipid. So basically this cell membrane is composed of lipid bilayer, and in this lipid bilayer we have here the phosphate group, the polar end. As the phosphate group is charged, so due to charge we say that it's a polar end, whereas these ends, these spiral or these projections जो कि आपको नजर आ रही हैं hang on हुई हुई, these are fatty acids. These are fatty acids obviously attached to glycerol molecule. So these are fatty acids attached to glycerol molecule. ठीक है बेटा? So this is lipid bilayer that has two ends. I should label them कि ये हमारे पास is the polar end or hydrophilic end. As it is polar, it can attract water, whereas this end here is a hydrophobic or non-polar end. Hydrophobic or non-polar end. So these are fatty, and this is made up of phosphate part and that is made up of fatty acids chain. ठीक है जी? तो ये fatty acid chains है. तो the cell membrane is made up of lipid bilayer, and in that lipid bilayer we have two, within each layer we have two ends, the polar end and the non-polar end. The polar end which is here, ठीक है, and it is the polar end due to phosphate, and it is hydrophilic in nature. As you know, water also has got the charge, so this part can interact with water on the outside and inside of the cell. Whereas these ends which cannot contact with water, which cannot interact with water, are non-polar end, and these are basically two chains of fatty acid in each molecule. Two chains of fatty acid, two chains of fatty acid, two chains of fatty acid. So that's how they are made up of. सही है जी? Now, if you remember, I have also told you that there are molecules which are filling up or linking up the space between them. I was talking about this space. ठीक है? These, I was talking about these molecules. If you can see in my diagram, these are the molecules present in between these fatty acid chains, and they are basically linking them together, or इस लिंक की वजह से एक ब्रिज बन जाता है, जिसकी वजह से स्टेबिलिटी भी आ जाती है, एंड एट द सेम टाइम एज इट इज ऑल्सो अ फ्लूइड बेस्ड मॉलिक्यूल, तो इससे फ्लेक्सिबिलिटी या फ्लूइडिटी आ जाती है. एंड रिमेंबर व्हाट वाज दिस मॉलिक्यूल? This molecule was, if you remember, this molecule was, yes, cholesterol. This molecule was cholesterol. ठीक है ना? तो that's how cholesterol is oriented within the cell membrane. So we have large number of phospholipid molecules along with hydrophilic and hydrophobic ends, and the hydrophobic and hydrophilic ends, you can see here, oppose each other. They are not seeing it. They are not able to see each other. Whereas the hydrophobic ends, you can see here that hydrophobic ends are seeing each other. Hydrophobic जो ends हैं ये एक दूसरे को यहाँ पर देख सकते हैं. They are facing each other and they are protecting themselves from the interaction with water as they are non-polar ends. ठीक है? And they are linked together. They are linked together by chain of molecules which is cholesterol. ठीक है? And that's responsible for the fluidity of the membrane. And on the same side एक और बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीज आपने पढ़ी थी, and that was protein molecules. That was about protein molecules, जो कि हमने कहा था दो तरह के हैं, and I should show you both of them. There are large number of these type of protein molecules, and you can see in my diagram that there are two kinds actually. एक वो protein molecules हैं, they are completely embedded. They are completely embedded in the structure of the lipid membrane, and we call them intrinsic protein. Whereas those who are just partially attached or are called extrinsic proteins. So cell membrane is composed of lipid bilayer, and this lipid bilayer is made up of which lipid? Phospholipid. It has got two ends, phosphate end and the fatty acid end. The phosphate end is polar, and therefore phosphate ends on both the sides on the both lipid bilayer are going to interact with water. ठीक है? साइटोप्लाज्म का, यहाँ एक्स्ट्रा सेलुलर फ्लूइड का. इसके बाद both the layers have got two fatty acid chain per molecule, which are the non-polar parts of this structure, and they face each other. They face each other. They face each other, and they do not interact with water. Next point is that the chains or the space in between the lipid bilayer is filled or is connected via another fat-based molecule, that is cholesterol. And this cholesterol is not only linking the fatty acid chains, but it also is stabilizing the overall structure, at the same time maintaining the fluidity of the cell membrane. And it is due to the flexibility provided by the cholesterol molecule that cell membrane can just swim. It shows the floaty way of movement. ठीक है ना? It is due to cholesterol. उसके बाद फिर मैंने कहा this layer, मैंने छोटा सा पार्ट बनाया है. This layer is continuously interrupted by large number of protein molecules, and basically we see two kinds of protein molecules. Some protein molecules are larger and they are completely embedded within the lipid bilayer, whereas some molecules are comparatively smaller and they are only partially attached to the lipid bilayer. ठीक है ना? ये उम्मीद है कि आपको समझ में आया होगा. वी हैव लॉट टू टॉक अबाउट दिस, बट आई विल शो यू द वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ दिस, एंड उसके बाद फिर जो है ना वो यहाँ से आगे कंटिन्यू करते हैं. लेट्स क्विकली वॉच द वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन नाउ, एंड देन उसके बाद हम यहाँ से कंटिन्यू करते हैं.
The cell, the basic unit of life in all organisms, has several organelles embedded in its cytoplasm. These organelles are surrounded by a thin membrane called the plasma membrane, which not only separates the extracellular environment from the cytoplasm, but also gives shape to the cell. Before the advent of the electron microscope, scientists conducted chemical studies on the cell membrane and deduced that it is composed of lipids that mainly consist of phosphoglycerides. These lipids are arranged in a bilayer with the polar hydrophilic head of both layers pointing outward towards the aqueous environment, and the nonpolar hydrophobic tail made of saturated hydrocarbons pointing inward. Such an arrangement not only protects the tail from the aqueous environment, it also prevents polar molecules such as nucleic acids, proteins, and ions from diffusing through it. Later, biochemical investigations revealed that apart from lipids, proteins and carbohydrates too are a part of the cell membrane. Moreover, the proteins are arranged in two forms, peripheral and intrinsic. Peripheral proteins lie on the surface of the membrane and can be easily removed by physical methods. On the other hand, intrinsic proteins are totally or partially embedded in the bilayer and can be removed only after disrupting the entire membrane. Scientists also deduced that the ratio of proteins to lipids varies greatly between different types of cells. For instance, the cell membrane of red blood cells is 52% proteins and 40% lipids. The advent of the electron microscope helped scientists better understand the structure of the cell membrane, and finally in 1972, Singer and Nicholson put forth the fluid mosaic model, which was widely accepted by the scientific community. This model stated that lipids are found in the form of a fluid bilayer. This quasi-fluid of almost fluid-like nature allows proteins to move laterally within the bilayer, and this ability of the membrane to allow the movement of molecules within it is referred to as membrane fluidity. The fluid nature of the membrane also allows the cell to perform important functions such as cell growth, the formation of intercellular junctions, secretion, and cell division. All these functions require flexibility in the membrane. For instance, during cell growth and cell division, the membrane has to extend. The cell membrane also guards the entry and exit of different molecules and ions in and out of the cell. However, the cell membrane is selectively permeable, which means the lipid bilayer allows only certain small nonpolar substances such as oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules to pass freely through it, while selectively permitting ions and other polar molecules, including water, to pass through it with the aid of membrane proteins. The transport of these ions and molecules takes place either through passive transport or through active transport. In passive transport, substances require no metabolic energy to move across the membrane. Passive transport occurs either through diffusion or osmosis. In a cell membrane, we observe simple diffusion and facilitated diffusion. In simple diffusion, oxygen and carbon dioxide molecules freely move across the membrane from higher to lower concentration, whereas larger molecules, such as glucose, are transported by facilitated diffusion, in which carrier proteins in the membrane change their shape and accelerate the diffusion process. On the other hand, osmosis refers to the movement of water molecules across the cell membrane through diffusion. In active transport, transmembrane proteins act as pumps and utilize the energy from ATP to move substances against their concentration gradient, that is, from lower concentration to higher concentration. An example for this is the sodium-potassium pump. Sometimes, glucose is also transported against the concentration gradient via active transport. The cell membrane, which helps in the transport of substances, is also a part of the cilia and flagella, hair-like structures that project from the cell's surface. These structures emerge from centriole-like structures called basal bodies and share a similar structure, though cilia are smaller than flagella. Their core, called the axoneme, is covered by the cell membrane and has numerous microtubules running parallel to its axis. Two microtubules join to form a doublet. If we observe a cross-section of the axoneme, we will see 9 pairs of radially arranged peripheral doublets and a pair of centrally located microtubules which are interconnected by a bridge. Such an arrangement of axonemal microtubules is known as the 9+2 array. The central microtubules are enclosed by a central sheath, which is connected to one of the microtubules of each peripheral doublet by a radial spoke. The peripheral doublets too are interconnected by linkers called an interdoublet bridge. The cilia and flagella help the cell propel or move the fluid surrounding the cell. Thus, it helps in motility. Thus, cilia and flagella help cells in motility, while the cell membrane gives shape to the cell, separates the intracellular components from the extracellular matrix, and also plays an important role in the transport of substances across the cell.
ओके गाइज, आप लोगों ने वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन देख ली है और आपको इन प्रोटीन के स्ट्रक्चर का बहुत ही अच्छा सा एनिमेटेड वर्जन देखने को मिला होगा. आई जस्ट वांट टू कंटिन्यू एंड वांट टू जस्ट टेल यू फ्यू मोर पॉइंट्स एंड देन फिर हम प्रोटीन्स को अलग से डिस्कस करेंगे इंशाल्लाह ताला. दैट्स द डिटेल्ड डिस्कशन ऑफ दिस टॉपिक. सो उसके अलावा मैंने आपको बताया था कि देयर आर सम कार्बोहाइड्रेट इन्वॉल्वमेंट ऑल्सो ड्यूरिंग दिस in this structure. Carbohydrate involvement भी होती है. And if you remember, I've told you that there are two types of carbohydrate molecules. One is the type which is attached like this on the outer. These will be on the outer surface. ये inner side पे नहीं होंगे. One is the type जो कि इस तरह से attach है to the lipid molecule. The other type is not attached to lipid. The other type is attached like this here. Again on the outer side. Okay, on the protein. ठीक है ना? So here we can see two kinds of attachments of carbohydrate. This is carbohydrate and this is also a carbohydrate. ठीक है, थोड़ा सा और prominent बना दूँ, नजर आ रहा है. So here you can see that there is a continuous presence of these kinds of carbohydrate molecules which are either attached to this phospholipid part or phospholipid molecule or are attached to the protein molecules. So those who are attached to phospholipid molecules are called glycolipids. ठीक है, and those who are attached to protein are obviously called glycoproteins. Glycolipids and glycoprotein. So that's the structure जो आपने अपने पास फ्लूइड मोज़ेक मॉडल के पॉइंट्स में लिखा था. जो फ्लूइड मोज़ेक मॉडल के पॉइंट्स में जो चीज़ें आपने मेंशन की थी वो मैंने यहाँ इस डायग्राम में आपको समझाई हैं, एंड आई एम रियली होपिंग कि आपको अच्छे से समझ में भी आ गई होंगी. सो दैट्स ऑल अबाउट द स्ट्रक्चर, द फ्लूइड मोज़ाइक स्ट्रक्चर. अच्छा, व्हाई दिस इज कॉल्ड फ्लूइड मोज़ाइक स्ट्रक्चर? दैट्स एन इम्पॉर्टेंट क्वेश्चन. Actually, this, as you can see here, that cell membrane is showing a lot of fluidity. It is continuously, it can move due to cholesterol, due to lipid nature. Its lipid nature, it can continuously move like this. So it shows the fluidity. It shows the fluid-based movements. फिर ये कि अगर हम इसे ऊपर से देखते हैं ना, सॉरी, अगर हम सेल मेम्ब्रेन को माइक्रोस्कोप में ऊपर से देखते हैं तो वी सी अ सरफेस जिसमें जगह जगह पे these heads of protein are visible. These heads of protein are visible. आप ऊपर से देखें तो it looks like this. मैं यहाँ शो करता हूँ आपको. Let's suppose अगर हम एक ये बैंड ऑफ सेल मेम्ब्रेन देख रहे हैं ऊपर से, तो it appears like this. And obviously the lipid heads. ठीक है ना. ऊपर से जब हम देखते हैं तो ये इस तरह से दिखता है. इसमें ये जो छोटे ब्लू से जो डॉट्स मैंने बनाए, दीज डॉट्स आर लिपिड हेड्स, जो पोलर हेड्स हैं. ठीक है, जबकि जो ब्लैक से आपको दिख रहे हैं, दीज आर प्रोटीन मॉलिक्यूल्स जो कि एम्बेड हुए हैं या लूजली अटैच हुए हैं. तो बेसिकली दिस अपीयरेंस, अगर आप लोगों ने कभी देखा है, दिस अपीयरेंस इज मोज़ाइक अरेंजमेंट. आपने मोज़ाइक टाइल देखा, मोज़ाइक टाइल जो होता है, तो दैट टाइल हैज दिस अरेंजमेंट. वी कॉल दिस डॉटेड अरेंजमेंट द मोज़ाइक अरेंजमेंट, and that is why we call this model fluid mosaic model. Why we call that fluid mosaic model? Because the cell membrane is showing the fluidity, at the same time the appearance or the arrangement of protein within the lipid bilayer is of mosaic pattern. Therefore the Singer and Nicholson named this model fluid mosaic model. So बहरहाल that's all about the model. ये मॉडल ख़त्म नहीं हुआ है. आई एम गोइंग टू एक्सप्लेन द टॉपिक्स ऑफ प्रोटीन सेपरेटली, ताकि आपको अच्छा सा कॉन्सेप्ट बन जाए, बिकॉज दैट्स द मोस्ट कंफ्यूजिंग पार्ट ऑफ दिस स्ट्रक्चर. तो just as far as the model part is concerned, the structure is concerned, this is how the cell membrane is made up of. And inshallah ta'ala in the next lecture I'll be showing you particularly the role of protein and different types of जो प्रोटीन के इम्पोर्टेंस है, उसके ऊपर हम बात करेंगे इंशाअल्लाह ताला. ठीक है. नाउ जस्ट बिफोर एंडिंग द लेक्चर आई जस्ट वांट टू शो यू अनदर वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन, एंड दैट वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन इज अगेन गोइंग टू टॉक अबाउट सेल मेम्ब्रेन इन डिटेल, द स्ट्रक्चर, फ्लूइड मोज़ाइक स्ट्रक्चर एंड सम 3D एनिमेशन मोशन पिक्चर्स. सो वो भी आपको नज़र आएंगे. इंशाअल्लाह ताला यू विल गेट अ क्लियर आइडिया ऑफ एवरीथिंग जो कि आपको अब तक मैंने बताई है. ठीक है. अच्छा, इसमें एक चीज़ मुझे भी याद आ गई है, वो ये कि ग्लाइकोप्रोटीन और ग्लाइकोलिपिड्स की जो कंटिन्यूस शीट फॉर्म होती है, वी कॉल देम ग्लाइकोकैलिक्स. सो ये मैंने आपको पॉइंट्स में लिखवाया था. नाउ जस्ट क्विकली वॉच द वीडियो प्रेजेंटेशन एंड देन इंशाल्लाह ताला इस लेक्चर को इसी पॉइंट पर एंड करेंगे. इन द नेक्स्ट सेशन व्हेन वील मीट, वील बी टॉकिंग अबाउट प्रोटीन्स स्पेसिफिकली दैट आर एम्बेडेड इन द सेल मेम्ब्रेन. थैंक यू सो मच. टेक केयर. अल्लाह हाफिज़.